Mark, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. I'm really delighted and thrilled to be speaking with you today.
The feeling's mutual.
Good man.
I hope we get to talk about scaling organizations.
I hope so. We've had a wonderful conversation off air to date, so I'm really looking forward to this. We shared our background with you prior to the podcast, Mark. You know a little bit about us. Our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small to medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So what does scaling with purpose mean to you, Mark?
Wow, that's a broad question. Well, it means you got a strong mission for the company, then you're doing something that helps people in some way that's meaningful, and you commit to having a growth company. You know, you can't just cop out, and because you're going to do everything differently if you want to have a company that grows and creates value. And that's really what it's all about for me as an entrepreneurship teacher. I'm the quote entrepreneur in residence here at the Walton College at the University of Arkansas. And, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. Many people think that anyone who owns a business is an entrepreneur, but, there's a difference in a small business and an entrepreneurial venture that grows and has value that you can extract upon exit. And that's really what I'm all about.
Brilliant. I love that. And, you've referenced there that deliberate intention to grow. And that's, for me, the difference between scaling and growing. Growing is something that's potentially ad hoc. You have a good year, you have a bad year. Some years
Yes.
are pretty much level, but scaling is something deliberately intentional. Scaling with purpose, of course, is about doing good for the planet, people, or both. So, no, I love that. And look, I'd like to get into a little bit of your early career and how you got started with the Zweig Group, and
Sure.
You've scaled that significantly and scaled businesses within that. So give us a little bit of background to that journey, and then we'll dig into some of the learnings, some of the challenges that you overcome, if you wish.
Sure. Well, I don't think my story's all that unique, but I was always, as a kid, I was always interested in buying and selling. I started out with bicycles on my mom and dad's street corner. And then I got my first job at a bike shop when I was 12 or 13. My dad said, "Why don't you go down there?" He goes, "You're good at working on this stuff, because go down there and tell them you'll work for free. And if they like you at the end of the month, they can pay you $1 an hour." So it was one of the few times I actually listened to my old man. And I did exactly what he said. And not only did they hire me right away, they paid me $1 an hour. And by the end of the month, I was up to $1.25. And that was sort of the start. But then I got into motorcycles, and then I got into cars. And so, as a kid, I worked at bike shops and I had all these side ventures. And, the truth is, I just had more money than any of my friends. I always had 3 cars, 2 motorcycles, could eat out anytime I wanted, was completely out of control. My parents never saw me. And that started it out. And then I went to college at Southern Illinois University. The first thing I did there is I went to the local salvage yard that all the insurance wrecks went to. And I made a deal with the owner that I would pick out the cars I thought we could rebuild and sell, and his guys would do it. And then I sold them out of my front yard and the student union bulletin board. I also sold bicycles to other kids in the dorms. I lived in the dorms a short time. But when I also started, I had bikes sent to me by a bus from the bike shop that I worked at.
Wow.
And I worked for some interesting people. One of my mentors was a guy who was an economist, and in his middle age, he decided he wanted to do something that was good for the planet, that would be positively affected by an energy crisis, and that his 3 sons could work in. And he came up with the bike business, didn't know anything about it. And eventually he had 10 stores and a mail order catalog. And we were having stuff made in Taiwan, under our own brand. This is back in the 1970s. He was really an innovative guy, a great guy. He died only a couple of years ago. His name was Don Humphreys, but he was from Arkansas. I've had two real mentors in business. They both were from Arkansas, of all places, in the same city, West Memphis, which is kind of a depressed area. But this guy was brilliant. We would buy 5,000 Raleigh Grand Prix, and I'm sure you guys have to remember the Raleigh.
The
Raleigh bikes.
A very famous brand, yeah.
Yeah. And we would buy 5,000 of one type of bike, and then we would have sales that would be all weekend, 24 hours a day on the radio. We'd have rock bands in the parking lot. It was awesome, man. So anyway, that got me sort of started. And then I had a variety of businesses later on, and a friend of mine and I got a finance professor to put up the money and give us a little gas station, and we got an Indian moped franchise, and we started buying and selling used motorcycles. We did that, and that was sort of my early career. And then when I got out, I got an MBA. I went straight through my undergrad in 3 years, got my MBA in 1. I had a scholarship for that in grad assistantship. And anyway, when I was getting ready to graduate, I had no idea what I was going to do, at all. Never really. I thought I wanted to work in the auto industry originally. And when I was in grad school, I was the graduate student advisor to a team that did a market research project and then designed the advertising campaign for it was a joint deal, the College of Business and the College of Communications. And so to design this campaign to sell the then large Chevy, the 79 to 80 model Chevy Caprice and Impala. And we won for our research, and we went to GM, and we spent 3 days on the 14th floor of General Motors, which was the headquarters. Wow. I just read DeLorean's book. On a clear day, you can see General Motors. And I talked with these guys, and anyway, they basically told me, don't go to work in the auto industry. It's a dying industry. It really discouraged me. Now, in retrospect, later on, I became acquainted with Bob Lutz, who is a kind of famous car guy. He was on the board of GM. He was vice chairman of GM. He was vice chairman at Chrysler. He was on the board of BMW. He was on the board of Ford. And Lutz, anyway, I still talk with Lutz. He wrote a really nice testimonial on my book. But I was telling Lutz the other day, I said, you know what? Those guys really turned me off from the car business. But when I look back, I found this old picture of me standing there with some other students and Roger Smith, who was then the CEO of GM. And I looked so bad, Brendan. I had a $29 corduroy sport coat, the worst haircut and beard you've ever seen in your life. I borrowed a tie from a guy, and I thought, holy shit, this is why these guys told me not to go in the auto industry. They didn't think I would be able to cut it,
Oh, brilliant.
But anyway, my other interest was always architecture. And when I was a little kid, I used to draw floor plans, and I just wanted to design houses all the time. And so I kind of got seduced away by the world of business, along the way, and didn't go to architecture school. But so when I got out, my dad had me read this book, or shortly before I got out. It's called Secrets of a Corporate Headhunter by John Wareham. And it was kind of a bullshit book. But anyway, he really made it sound glamorous. And he knew a guy that had an executive search firm. And so I talked with this guy. I was getting out of school, and he hired me on the spot. I was the first person that he ever hired out of school to work there. And he was a brilliant guy, a bit obsessed and repetitive, but he at one time was the national sales manager for Xerox Corporation. and he designed their training program. And so I went through the best sales training program ever, which really helped the rest of my career. And the company was focused on the construction and real estate development industry. And they had opportunities to work with architects and engineers, but they didn't like them. They said they can't make a decision and they won't pay good fees. That was sort of the conventional wisdom, compared to contractors, which are like wheeler dealers, very impulsive in their decision making. These guys are all very analytical, but I gravitated toward them. They were a smart, creative, interesting group of people. And that's what started it for me. I then got recruited after 3 years there by one of my clients, and I became an owner there at a really young age. I borrowed 68 grand from Union Planters Bank, and they co-signed for it at 13% interest. And so the only reason they went out to people like me is they lost so much money the year before investing in CAD. And we really weren't geared to use CAD yet in the architecture and engineering industry. And they just lost a fortune. And so that's how I got into that. And then I got recruited by another one of my clients and moved from Memphis to Texas. And there I kind of met my second real mentor in business. He was a brilliant guy named Jerry Allen. And I realized I got up one day. Well, there were a couple things that happened. I did a business plan for my own business, and when I was 28 in 1986, and just put it on the shelf. And so at that time, one of our partners of this company put a draft Pat Robertson for president petition up inside his glass partition and wanted people to sign it. And, I know you may not be that well versed in American politics, but Pat Robertson was an evangelical preacher. And I thought, it's bullshit. This guy's coercing his employees to do this. Not to mention the fact he was absolutely the most hypocritical guy in the world, outwardly religious. And yet, whenever we went on a business trip, he was the guy you couldn't get out of the adult entertainment establishment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to my boss, the CEO. I was the head of marketing and HR for this company. And I said, Wilton, I think that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. And his response was, God damn it, Mark, this country was founded on Christian principles. If they don't like it, it's too bad. And that's when I said, I don't really want to work here. It's not my thing. I'm not going to force anybody to adopt my religious beliefs, And so anyway, I was writing for a newsletter. At the time, I started about 5 years or 3 years earlier. That was a management newsletter for my industry. And I always wrote a lot, and I was involved in professional associations and things like that. So this guy recruited me to go to Boston to be executive vice president in a company that was very similar to what we would create, that's known today as Zweig Group. It was a consulting, research, training company. It served architects and engineers. And what I found there, Brendan, was he was absolutely doing the opposite of everything that he advocated. It was, the place was a disaster. We were upside down. My first experience there was I had to go to the office supply store to buy some pads of paper and pens. And I was told we had an account there. And so I go down there, and you could walk over there. I walk over there and they go, cash and carry. I go, what do you mean? They go, cash and carry. Your credit's no good here. You guys don't pay your bills. And I thought, oh, shit. And, anyway, I end up in this place. He's the sole proprietor. He's got 6 of his family members, maybe 7 working there. It's nepotism galore. He's never there. He doing illegal things and unethical things, getting sued by everybody. And anyway, so I decided to do my own thing. Well, I shouldn't say that. I had an invitation to do my own thing. I really got this place turned around in 6.5 months to where we were positive working capital.
And give us an idea, Mark, of the scale that you took this to. So you went in, it was a sole proprietor, there was some family members there, nepotism was rife, you know, the values weren't aligned to your values, let's say.
No.
For the listeners, give them a sense of the scale you took this to in terms of the spread across the US, the regions that you were penetrating, number of employees, turnover.
If you want to get into Zweig Group, you know, as I said, my experience at this other place was relatively short-lived. The boss went to Europe and he came back and called me into the office. I was on my first vacation. I just bought an old 1870 Victorian house. I gutted it. And I get called in and I got fired because his family members didn't like me. It really started with his wife's cousin who was in charge of our trade show group. And we bought a lot of printing. At that time, it was about $400,000 a year. He was buying it all from his buddy who was a print broker. And he was either getting kickbacks or just letting this guy absolutely rape us. I got my 500 business cards in 1988 were $190. I said, something's wrong here. We're going to have 3 bids on all printing. And that was basically the beginning of my demise. You know, he hated me after that because his buddy got no business. And anyway, that was the story there. So here I was, unemployed, 30, just bought this house, gutted it at 13 days, you know, bought it 13 days before I got fired, had my business plan, was glad to be living in Boston, but you know, I borrowed $5,000 from my mom for the down payment. It's the first and last time I ever borrowed any money from my parents. Because, you know, my mom would call, like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, we're going to get pizza tonight. She's like, you can afford takeout pizza? You know, because I borrowed this $5,000 for 12 months, paid 12% interest to her, made my payments monthly. But in any case, so started my own business, said I never want to work for anybody else again. I was doing a good job. I got screwed royally. Never going to happen. Okay. And, you know, I always tell people, you know, my students, it's like, you think having a job is low risk. I go, it's like being self-employed with one client. You know, in business valuation, that's called client concentration risk, and it devalues your business dramatically. Okay. You know, I mean, it's just the logic of it. You can get fired by a client and you're still in business. But if you get fired by your only client when you're an employee, you're out of work. That had never happened to me before. I was used to being the star, you know, with a show. I mean, honestly, I'm sure my ego was entirely inflated. So I started my own business. I got back to what I was making $100,000 a year at that time. And right away, within the first month, I had $8,500 a month in income. I got my former employers in Texas put me on retainer. My company who fired me had me on 2 contracts because the boss knew I was competent. So I was editor of 2 newsletters for a fee. And then I got a new client there in Boston that was a pretty good sized, very high growth engineering company that was run by some smart entrepreneurial guys. And that started me off. And then I was very fortunate early on, I hired a guy. My then wife said, when I started this business, she goes, you got to get Fred White. So Fred was a guy, just one of these quirky people, you know, grew up rich, went to Exeter Academy, which is presidents of the United States have gone there, you know, was in the class with Jenny DuPont, who was the first woman who graduated from Exeter. But anyway, he he dropped out. Well, he went to Exeter. He didn't graduate because he got caught smoking weed like the last week. He did graduate, but didn't get to walk in the ceremony. He then went to Penn, University of Pennsylvania, was a computer science and electrical engineering major, and then dropped out in his junior year, played in rock bands, hitchhiked around Europe, worked as a warehouseman. Then he got a job as a line cook at International House of Pancakes, which he always claimed was the best job because they really taught him how to be organized and process oriented. And then when I hired him at my last place where I got fired as an intern for $7 an hour. He was at Emerson College getting his BFA. And I realized he was really smart. So anyway, I hired him full time at that company when he graduated. And when I started my own business, my wife said, you got to get Fred White. So I brought Fred in, and we had a real simple deal. I was the guy who made the big money and had the connections. And so what we did is we said, I'm going to pay myself $2,000 a month. I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month, Fred. And this guy was living in the Back Bay of Boston, riding a bicycle every day. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, he had nothing. And and then we'll take all our costs. And at the end of the month, we split the profits, 75 for me and 25 for you. So we did that. We called that the pie. And then if we brought anybody else in, they, if we liked them, we'd say, okay, now you can have 5% of the pie, and that would cut into mine and Fred's share accordingly. After 3 years, I realized what a brilliant guy this guy was. And so we incorporated in 91, and the company paid me back on a note for the book value that we'd accumulated. We each put $1,000 in. Fred had 40%, I had 60, because it was the right thing to do. Yeah. And from then on, it really, we just kind of went straight up. We grew by 30% annually for 13 years in a row, and got on the Inc. 500 list 2 years in a row. That time it was only 500 companies. We had no debt. We had the best, cash flow of anybody. We had almost no book value, but we're always profitable. And grew, like crazy. And anyway, then 2001 hit. So by that time, we had probably 6 or 7 offices based in Boston. San Francisco was our second largest office. It was a little company I acquired in 1990 for next to nothing. I think my total acquisition cost was like $50,000 over a period of a couple of years. We took that from a $400,000 business to about a $5 million revenue business. But anyway, it was all part of our business.
Yeah.
Then we had a DC office, and then we had a couple guys in Austin, and we had a couple guys in Atlanta, and we had, somebody in LA and somebody in New York. But we didn't really need to be there. It was just, those were places to be. And our company was national, somewhat international. Maybe 5-10% international. And so 2001 hit, and it was a terrible time. Scary as hell for us. The way we grew. Well, let me go back to the sort of high growth period, because that's what you're really interested in consistent performance. There were some real fundamentals that made that work for us. One, we had a business plan, we followed it, we updated it twice a year, and we involved every single employee in that process. So they were always all there. We gather everybody together twice a year. The summer event was very casual, a couple days of work, maybe a day of work and a day of partying and playing. And then the winter, the December one was always the big event. We had 3 days. Every group had to do their own plan. We had a variety of different sort of cylinders in this engine and present it to us there. And then we adopted an overall business plan for the year. And the first night, we'd have an open house at our office and invite all our clients. And then the second night, we'd have a black tie affair at a hotel and give out awards. You know, we'd have like employee talent shows, stuff like that, funny stuff. We'd all wear tuxes and the women would dress in their evening attire. And then on the last night, we'd have a giant party at my house. You know, the last year we did this, there were like 3 levels of bars. You know, it was insane. Okay. Absolutely friggin' insane. I like looked toward my library and the door was shut and there were flashing lights. And I went in there and there was like a 350-pound guy breakdancing, you know? So the business planning process though, and then open book management, tracking all of our goals and our performance, sharing that report with every single employee. Okay. And then we coupled that with a bonus program that was based on our cash basis P&L, and it was paid out monthly. So we would set the percentage of dollars that flowed into the pool every year at this meeting. And it generally ran 25% to all employees, somewhere between 40 and 60% to the owners, because we did sell stock to key people. In the end, we had 23 or 24 total shareholders, all employees. And then the rest would be retained. You know, it was based on what our capital needs were for the year. So that bonus program was essential. And if you became an owner, we financed that. So the other part of that was we'd sell stock to key people and we'd start them off at about 15,000 worth. They'd finance that over 5 years. The company took it out of payroll. And then, of course, they immediately got their monthly pro rata share of distribution. So that would help pay for the stock. And we also gave anybody who was an owner, well, no, I take that back. Only owners at a certain level all got company vehicles. And we had really nice cars. You know, my requirement is it has to be European and I have to like the color. Okay, that's it. Okay, forget it otherwise. And
good criteria.
We had a great fleet of cars. We had really cool offices. We always made our office fun, rotating displays of antique motorcycles, free food and drink all day, whatever you wanted. Okay. Great benefits, paid dependent coverage for everybody. So, you know, there were some fundamentals, the open book combined with the profit distribution formula, then selling the stock and financing it. And then the people got an average rate of 50% return on that stock. So there was a real strong internal stock market that really supported the capitalization of the company, you know, because every year we would raise more equity capital by employees. That note was allowable as equity right away because it was an interest-bearing note. It wasn't contingent on bonuses. Yeah. So, you know, that was a great model right there with the business plan. Everybody had their own unit, but we was one profit center, and that was the overall company. And so it was sort of magical, really.
There's so much in this, Mark, that just given the last 20 minutes, there's just so many different directions that we can go in. You're coming together every 6 months is very much like what we did in our previous business. We called them pit stops. We liked cars. When we set our 5-year vision, we took all of the leadership team to Mercedes in Stuttgart and Sindelfingen to see how the Mercedes cars were made, and to see this now $1 billion business, which started with a seed of an idea. You could see the origin story and how it was built, and now these 100,000 of square feet of factory, and you see the raw blocks steel coming in and the car being driven out, and to give people that kind of visual of this is what this could become. So we had our 6 monthly pit stops, very similar. Clarity and vision, and I'm assuming when you said business plan that planning was connected to a clear vision that you guys had set.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a very clear, as far as we're concerned, I mean, to me, the core of the business plan, the strategy, the mission, vision, and strategies are your basic philosophies of how you're going to run it. The vision needs to be very clear on how large you want to get, by a certain point in time, in my mind, at least.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's always subject to interpretation. I don't like visions like, we'll be the best management consulting firm in our industry. Okay, how can you tell me whether you achieve that or not?
Yeah.
It's just, some guy, one of the partners say, I think we really did that this year. It was a great, and then another one say, yeah, but we totally screwed up. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, those things are fundamental. I mean, you're right.
I completely agree, and I've been reflecting on this of late, and I get asked this question a lot, and we talk about purpose instead of mission. So why do you exist? And then the vision is I see the vision and purpose as two ends of a telescope. The purpose is your eyepiece, it's your eye lens, and it's always the same. Depending on the length of the telescope will ultimately, and that's the number of years you go out, will ultimately determine the scale of your vision. But that must be, so essentially your vision is the full expression of your purpose as you can see it and articulate it at that point in time, depending how long you go out.
It's so true. I mean, our mission was really simple. We exist to make our architecture and engineering and planning firm clients more successful.
Yeah,
that was it. I mean, and you can define success in terms of money or growth or even personal control over their lives, which is ultimately what it really matters, right? And then our vision was to be a certain size by a certain point in time, and so it's very clear. But the strategies are so critical. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's so much bullshit in business. So much. I mean, I said to my wife just last night, we were at the dinner, and I said, it makes me sound like a real jerk. But as soon as I start hearing all the cliches come out of somebody's mouth, I lose all respect for them.
Yeah.
Today, it's like everybody's friggin' leaning into one thing or another, and pivot. She goes, but pivot's a good word. She goes, that is a decent word. You can't fault them too much for that. But I mean, at the end of the day, and they're leaning in and we're deep diving and all of it. As soon as I hear that, it's like, I'm done. I can't stand it.
So let's get into that a little bit, because you've touched on the second principle of our Scale X framework, which is purpose and vision. You've also touched deeply on the planning, which is the fourth principle of our Scale X framework. They're all P's, by the way. So we don't talk about strategy, we talk about planning, which essentially that's what strategy is. Where are you going to go, why are you going there, and how are you going to get there? Basically, what's the plan? So what was the in terms of stripping out all of the noise and all of the business speak, what practically did your planning process look like when you guys came together, so that everyone went away and goes, yep, we know what we're doing now. We know how we're going to execute our vision over the next 6 months before we get together again. Practically, what did you do? What did that look like, Mark?
Well, I mean, they had to look. I mean, our mission, our vision, and our strategies, I'm going to say there's some tweaking, but they held the test of time really, really well. So what your instructions to your managers would be, with this mission, with this vision, with these strategies, what are you going to do in the next year?
Yeah.
What resources do you need?
Yeah.
And I made every one of them come up with these two things. What 3 new things are you going to offer this year to our client base? And what 3 new ways are you going to use to market that? Okay. And that was the pivotal part right there. Because if everybody's focused on, because Brendan, it's not just better marketing. I mean, marketing's super important, and we really spent a ton of money on that. I'll talk about that if you want at some point. But it's having new stuff, evolving, new products, new offerings. it's not just good enough and they don't all work, obviously, but everybody had to come up with that.
Yeah, look, culture is coming out strong from you, Mark, in terms of actually seeding a culture where people were encouraged. Just given what you've described with the 3 days coming together every 6 months, clearly there's a culture of having fun, but with a clarity of purpose and mission, clarity of your vision, clearly an instruction that, okay, we're going to go away and it's really important that we execute, but we are encouraged to be creative as managers. We're encouraged to be curious. That's coming across strongly. Authenticity is coming across strongly. How did you deliberately cultivate, and did you deliberately cultivate a culture that you wanted aligned to your own values?
It really wasn't that hard. I think a big part of that was hiring young people who hadn't had a lot of experience. They were more malleable. And we had such a great system that we could hire virtually anybody we wanted to hire because they could become an owner. They got their share of profits. They liked the free food. Everybody's poor coming out of school. So, you just get the best ones, and then they see the office and it looks cool. And, everybody doesn't look the same. We didn't have a formal dress code or stuff like that. Like the first company I worked in, you couldn't even take your coat off in the office. the guy came out of Xerox. I mean, we had, it was super formal.
Dress down Fridays was not to wear your coat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so to get that culture is easier when you do that. I mean, and the other thing is just constant communication. I had a PA system in the main office, and I would get on it all the time and say things. We did things like every single order or job that came in, a bell was rung.
Right.
So just all day long, like here's somebody orders 20 books and it would go ding, 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 ding. Be like, what do we get? What do we get? And then big jobs, later on we had a gong, and people would hit the gong. And so, it creates some excitement. It's sharing the sales report of every single thing for the month to date, the prior month, the year to date versus the goal. We sent that to everybody every day. Every new job that we got as a consulting job was announced to every employee daily, not once a day, but as they came in. So, bells are ringing, emails are coming, we're having our once a month call with the accolades. You get your report every day that shows where we are in percentage to our goal. We still give a sales report out every day. And, those things just get everybody sort of aligned, to this scaling idea, and they can see why it benefits them. The culture, I'm sure at times I was overly dominant, and I was never a level 5 leader. I have no problem admitting it. Okay. Nevertheless, I was able to cultivate people who could run it after I was gone. At least the second time around I did. But we did a lot of crazy stunts. We told a lot of stories. Whenever we traveled together, we hung out together. These are the ways that you build that culture and the camaraderie.
Yeah, I interviewed Margaret Heffernan earlier on this season. Wonderful lady. She talks about social capital and the importance of the mortar between the bricks. She uses the metaphor of constructing a house. The bricks are the people, the mortar is what happens between the people, and it's so critically important that you actually, as a leader, cultivate and strengthen that mortar to bind the bricks. And you clearly did that naturally, though. In terms of actually bringing people together. There's something that you've said. There's transparency was something that you upheld, and 100%. I'm a great believer in transparency, creating trust, and then celebrating the wins, acknowledging when you have you've made that achievement. How important were both the transparency, the celebration, and the third element of the of the ownership, the fact that employees could own a part of the Zweig Group, how, you know, those elements coming together, how important do you feel that each were?
I mean, that's a great question, but I'm not sure I can't really separate any of them out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all important to me. It's like, you know, I'm sure there's some people who probably get tired of my teaching style or my consulting because I'm going to keep coming back to certain themes. It's not that I can't learn anything new. It's just that I know these things work if you just freaking do them.
Yeah.
And you see so many small or privately held company owners, and they don't do these things. They don't share information. They're not distributing the rewards fairly. They don't go have lunch with the lowest level employee and really get to know that person. I mean, I could just go on and on. They just do one stupid thing after another. They never develop anybody. All decisions flow through them. That's a huge constraint. That's their trap. You know, it's just like, stop doing this stuff and start doing what you need to do, you know, and it works.
Yeah. And again, you know, you speak to many of the 10 principles which we have enshrined within our ScaleX framework. And, you know, we assert this is the blueprint to success. And, you know, for every successful scaling company, there's a pattern to success and there's also a pattern to failure. Something that you've referenced is the mindset of the leader, which is the very first principle that we reference in our ScaleX framework, the psyche. And now clearly you have a really strong growth-oriented mindset. Do you feel that was, is that nature or nurture, do you feel, Mark?
Gosh, that's another good question. I'm not sure I can answer. It may be a little bit of both, truthfully. I do think there's something to a birth order and people's assessment of risk. You know, some people see risk differently, and that really inhibits their growth mindset, whether they have one or not. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
You know, what really, you know, gets me about the totality of your accomplishment is just the sheer breadth and scale. I mean, we were chatting earlier, you can't even recall how many books you've written because it's like 13 or 14. You know, it's not one or two books. You know, you've built and scaled a number of businesses. You're now lecturing. You know, I opened one of your books the weekend. It had 800 pages in it. And I must confess that I didn't.
The best organized either, but anyway, it's okay.
I didn't get so far on that one. How do you prioritize what you spend your time on now? And
you can't really look at my life today versus what it was when I was in business. And, you know, I mean, at my peak, I had 2 companies, both on the Inc. 5000 list and teaching 3/4 time. And I was probably doing a really crap job at everything. So I'm horrible at prioritizing my time. I wish I could tell you I was great. I sort of prioritize it based on what I really want to do and who I want to spend my time with. That's probably the most important thing to me. May not be what needs to be done. But, you know, I mean, the truth is in business, Brendan, I'm super disciplined. Okay. I mean, I'm a guy that wants to pay all his bills immediately. I do certain things very regimented in certain ways, and it allows me to get a lot done that some other people won't get done. But today I'm very lazy and I only want to do exactly what I want to do. And if I don't like it, then I don't really want to do it. And I do a shitty job at it. I really come to that awareness. You know?
I love that. Tell me, Mark, given
a lot of time.
Given the extensive business career that you've had and all of the accomplishments, you referenced 2001 clearly as a challenging year and a challenging time. If you had to go back again, what would you do differently and why?
Wow. We won't talk about wives. We could, you know, but getting together with somebody at age 18 who had a horrible childhood experience is probably not a good idea. So I might do that differently. Honestly, Brendan, I'm not sure I would do it all over again, although I have absolutely no regrets. I'm super happy and content with my life. And I just want to value every moment of every day and take the joy from it. That's my singular goal at this point. But I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I do think it's really important to think about who you want to spend your time with and how you want to spend your day, because that's ultimately what, wealth, if there is, and I'm certainly, there's a lot of people who are better off than I am financially, but I consider myself very wealthy in how I get to spend my time. And I might be a college professor if I was doing it all over again. I mean, to me, it's been the greatest experience. I can't say enough good about the College of Business that I work in. It's high growth. We've achieved #1 in certain categories, like supply chain in the world, which is pretty amazing status for a state-run institution in Arkansas. I work with great people. I get to work with young people and see them be successful. Tomorrow I've got one of my students coming over to just talk with me about what he's doing, and a former student, Hispanic, first generation, graduated not only from college, but from high school in his family. And he's just a brilliant guy. I love this guy, and I can't wait to talk with him tomorrow, because what I'm really going to ask him tomorrow is, what do you really want to do with your life? Do you want to be the leader? Do you want to do your own thing? Or do you just want to have a comfortable life and be really good at doing something, working in an organization? Because my advice to you is going to be different depending on your answer to that,
But do you believe that in creating an inspiring vision, that ultimately it's not a case of, well, I can either scale this company towards that vision and be prepared for, a lot of sacrifices in terms of my own purpose and another version of that, or certainly, create a vision which you're passionate and motivated about, truly inspired by, and that you can live out your own personal purpose aligned to delivering value to others through your scale up journey.
I mean, I don't know what I can say to that, but I mean, I think, that's the goal right there. I mean, you defined for me what the purpose of creating any business is really all about. And, I mean, people do it for a lot of reasons. They want to change an industry. They want to do something better than is available now. They want to prove somebody wrong. I mean, there's a zillion motivations for it. But the bottom line is, it better be an industry that you have an interest in and passion for. And passion and purpose, are not the same thing. Let's be honest. I love cars. I mean, my tastes are super eclectic. I've had like one of everything. My current fleet is a 99 Rolls-Royce Silver Spur, which is the very last of them, British Racing Green. Love that. Horrible car. Love it. Always broken. I got 2 old VW Beetles recently, and I'm just enjoying them so much. Okay. They're so fun to work on. You can get any part you want. They were super high quality when they were built, but they're like a farm implement or a lawnmower or something. And so anyway, but I love those things. But is that my purpose in life? No, but I do waste a certain amount of time on it. But I do think there is this distinction between passion and purpose, and you better have the purpose or it all becomes meaningless.
So what questions do you ask your young students, Mark, to help them articulate and find their purpose?
I mean, it's hard. I think a lot of them are really confused. They don't know. They're torn. if you look at my students, I mean, 60% of them are from families that never had a college graduate. So the parents want, they've made sacrifices. They want them to get this degree, and they don't want them to get a degree so they can open up a taco stand. They want them to get a degree so they can get a good job working at Procter and Gamble or whatever, Hershey's or Mars or whatever and get paid 80 grand a year to start. And, that's what they want for them. They think that's going to be a better life than they had. And so, and for some of them, that is what they want. But, the ones that don't want that, then my goal is much like yours. I think maybe, you're used to working with people who already own businesses that want to grow them. But, so it's basically the same thing. Let's work out a plan for you. I mean, so to me, it starts with the questions like, where do you want to live? And what industry do you really like? And, you can start with that. And what's a good place to enter that? Because, I don't know what your experience was, but mine was, before you were running this business that you were running and making it into what it was, you probably worked for other people. All right. I did. And those jobs were super valuable. Yeah. At least I was in the industry that I was going to go into that I felt did something good for society. Architects and engineers improve the quality of life for all of us. I mean, they give us better places to live, work, beauty, clean environment, water, transportation systems, schools, hospitals, everything we need. I mean, and they do that with the best intentions. Yeah. Okay. I love that. So that's a good industry to devote yourself to. So you can learn from the industry you serve, but you can also, learn a lot from the jobs and the companies. And from the companies, you can pick up, hey, they do this, it works really well. They do this, it's horrible. I want to do the opposite. I mean, my business plan was almost, for the company that started as Mark Zweig and Associates, then Zweig White, now today's Zweig Group. My plan was like, do the opposite of the last guy I worked for. Yeah. Just everything the opposite. Yeah. I mean, it's really. Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
So those formative experiences in a place that you want to work, in an industry that you want to work, and then you're not going to waste any time having to backtrack because all that's going to be super valuable to you.
Yeah, completely agree. Something you mentioned earlier, just before we move into our close, you referenced marketing and the importance of marketing. Can you open that out a little bit further, Mark?
Sure.
Why is marketing so important? And especially there's so many different channels now, and there's so much jargon out there. You're a guy who now in your 60s, what is the essence of marketing?
It's knowing what it is you're trying to sell and having very clear idea of the benefits of that. Okay. Coupled with relentless activity of many different kinds. As you said, there's so many channels and so many ways to do it. But to just get that consistent message out there through virtually every medium you can, and to your clearly defined target audience. For us, we knew that was architects and engineers that had probably over 50 people. They were big enough that they were interested in doing something, with their business. Maybe not over 2,000, 3,000 people. Then they got so big, they thought they knew everything. And the owners and managers of those companies, because they're the ones that aim at the CEO, because if he likes you, everything else falls down. Very clear target audience. I mean, I was in the development business. Another of my businesses that we didn't talk about was buying old houses and restoring them, renovating them to a very high quality standard, higher than anybody did around here. And, so the same thing there. We always knew who our target customers were that we were aiming at. You could have a very clear idea. that if I'm going to do a house and sell that to a single divorced woman who's got little dogs, you know, we can paint it purple. We can have a dog washing station downstairs. We don't need more than a 1-car garage, you know, because she doesn't have 2 vehicles. I mean, we're going to have a fantastic kitchen and a really great master closet, you know. I mean, it's like certain things you've got to, everything in the business has to align with your client base, everything. And you know, I think that's really critical.
How important is it, Mark, to, you know, the marketing speak is your client avatar, you know, that persona of the person that you're selling to? How did you guys do that in the earlier stages, and how important is it to really stay in your lane in relation to, you know, we are targeting that lady maybe in her early 60s who's living on her own with a dog, you know, only 1 car, to really get super specific in terms of the client you're selling to? Because the risk is, and I hear this consistently with some of the CEOs that I'm working for, yeah, but we could sell that same house to a family, and we could, you know, convert the garage into an extra bedroom, and we could, you know, and you go, well, yes, but if, so how what would you say to our listeners in terms of getting super disciplined and super clear in terms of that client avatar?
I think it's really critical. I mean, like, one of the things I'd have my students do with their new venture business plans is come up with a target customer collage. You know, it's like, let's see some real pictures. What do these people actually look like? How do they dress? Where do they drive? Where do they listen to? What do they watch? What do they read? What do they eat? You know, build the whole thing, because the clearer that is, the greater the likelihood that you're going to have an offering that meets their needs. Now, one thing I did learn, though, in the real estate business is this: if I like something, odds are somebody else like me is going to like it. So, you know, designing your business around yourself as the target customer is the easiest thing to do, because you know exactly what you need. You know, I had a student did that with a business he just sold to a private equity firm. It was a clothing business called Fayetteville. And he came here from the DFW area, which you know, because you've had an office there. You know, it's sterile, it's concrete, it's got no soul, everything's new, nobody's from there. And he comes to Fayetteville and it's like kayaking, craft beer, mountain biking, spelunking, you know. These things are all great. Let's buy an old Land Rover and get a big dog. You know, and he did all that, all right? You know, and then he designed a clothing company around other people like him who come to school here, which is a lot. And, you know, suddenly he's got this business that's got a following because he totally understood what they liked. He designed it after himself. Now, the problem with businesses like that is they don't always evolve along with the owner. You know, what happens when this guy's 35 years old now and not 22, and he doesn't know what they want, or 20? You know, suddenly now he's selling stuff to middle-aged guys like him who have 2 kids, you know, and the Land Rover's gone and now they got a Prius, you know. It's so the whole shtick is different. Sometimes they can evolve like that and they pick up a new customer base. Other times they just get completely out of touch with their original customer base.
Yeah.
But I think it's super critical. I mean, the other thing is, we didn't say, you just have to spend a lot of money and you got to commit to it on marketing and promotion. It's off balance sheet investment is what I call it. I mean, it is an investment in the business, build the brand, you know, constant promotion. But it doesn't show up on your balance sheet. It shows up as an expense.
Did you measure the return on your marketing at all? Did you try
relentlessly? We did direct mail the first time I owned the business, and then the second time after I got it back, after it was taken back by its mezzanine lenders in 2009, and they recruited me back in 2010. we went to email. And thank God for e-marketing, because direct mail was dying. But we spent a fortune on direct mail, and we knew the response of every single promo. We had one central shared database from the day we started the business that ran on a wide area network, and we knew everything that everybody ever bought from us. And unbelievably valuable in every promo, how well it did. And, again, I got to give credit to my partner I mentioned, Fred White. He cooked up all our systems. He was a brilliant guy. All his stuff actually worked, and he managed that process like a machine. And, it was so linear. Spend 30% more in marketing, grow by 30%. I had a chart. I've got it somewhere, hand drawn, of increase in marketing expenditure, increase in revenue growth. And, now I will say in 01, when things cratered, we had the scare with the, whatever the stuff was that was in the mail and all that. And then 9/11, and we thought the world was going to end. I was very scared then. And at that time, I was going through a really tough divorce from my first wife, who really lost, her control of her life from alcohol and drug addiction. And so I had to step back in my business. And I will say the first thing my partners did in year 14 was cut back on marketing, because they wanted to be more profitable, and the growth plateaued instantly. It was like you just took your foot off the gas, I swear. It just plateaued. And that hurt our value. We had the company sold in 01. And then when 9/11 hit, the buyer pulled out completely. And it definitely hurt our value when we sold it in 2004, was that leveling off.
Yeah, but the fact that you tracked the data, you measured the return, you could clearly see the trend then, and have an objective conversation on that. You've been incredibly generous with your time, Mark. It's whenever you're in Ireland, please let's have a beer together. I think it'd be immense fun.
That invite applies to you too. If you do get the DFW, you're not far from me. So
brilliant. Well, I look forward to it. Look, given the rich life that you've had to date, I always pose this question to all of our guests. Can you share with our listeners 3 timeless takeaways?
3 timeless takeaways. Wow. Takeaways from my life experience.
Anything, any which way.
I mean, again, I think be nice to everybody, because it just, you want to be known as a nice guy and not an asshole. I mean, people will want to do business with you. They'll want to hire you. They'll want to help you. Just be nice to everybody. 2, the more stuff you have, the more complicated and distracted you'll be. I mean, if you go back to me 5-6 years ago, we had like 57 houses and condos, 44,000 square feet of commercial property, 2 businesses, maybe 20 cars, 10 bikes, an ex-wife, 4 kids at that time. I mean, it's just, you get so preoccupied maintaining all your stuff that your life quality is destroyed. Okay. And I guess the third thing is, a good partner is invaluable in life or business. I just, not just anybody, but somebody different from you. And my wife, honestly, she and I were friends long before we got together. We worked in business. She really helped me turn around Zweig Group when we got it back from the lender. She's a brilliant person. I feel like I'm a better person because of her. She has worked on me to make me a better person. Be with somebody who you can honestly say is smarter than you are and makes you a better person. Those would be my 3 pieces of advice.
Those are brilliant, Mark. I love your closing. I love your closing timeless takeaway, and I can certainly relate to that both in life and in business. So what's next for you, Mark?
Man, next for me is just continuing my work here at the university. I got a new book coming out called Confessions of an Entrepreneur. I'm very excited about that. I'd love to sell 1 million copies of it. I doubt I will. I think if you could sell 10,000 copies of it, it would be a tremendous success. But I hope it helps people. And otherwise, I'm just going to enjoy living my life, man. We're building a new garage here at our old Victorian house right in the middle of town. We sit on our porch a lot. We listen to music. We're going to Taos and Santa Fe. Maybe we'll get to read some nice books. Sitting on the lawn this summer. Just got back from the beach and keep my cars running. You know, I got these PW projects. I got one of them coming back from the body shop this week. The rolls, the radiator's bad. I just ordered a new one from England. It should be here like in the next couple days. We got an old RV we're going to restore. We have a perfect place for that. That's where we are, man.
Life is good, my friend. Life is good. And tell me, Mark, if people want to find out a little bit more about you, where best to reach you?
You can email me at mzweig, Z-W-E-I-G, M-Z-W-E-I-G at markzweig.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. Always glad to connect with anybody there. I do put a certain amount of content out there, only business related, not political. But yeah, either of those are great, and brilliant. I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to talk more.
Well, look, it's been really fun speaking with you today. I wish you all the very best in everything you're doing. I wish you every success with your new book, Confessions of an Entrepreneur. I've no doubt it's going to be super successful, given your background and given the richness of your experiences and both in life and in business that you can share with others, and especially our listeners. So, Mark, take care.
Been great talking to you, Brendan. You're such a great guy, and you have such a positive energy that I'm sure your listeners really appreciate what you're doing here.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you.